or two. Make sure that anyone else who wants to join is able to find their way to the room. And then we'll go ahead and get started, and I can introduce Grace in a minute and let her take it away. So we'll get going in just kind of a minute or so once people finish entering.
Sounds good.
If anyone has any trouble hearing us or seeing anything, let us know, but I think it seems like everything's working so far. So.
Oh, I didn't set up. Yesterday I said I was going to set up music again for the quiet times in between because it worked out well for our break on during orientation, but I did not start that.
You could sing a song.
Oh God, no one wants to hear me sing. It's like someone strangling a cat or stepping on a duck. Stepping on a duck is a great analogy. All right, let's see. This is not a good song to have on here. I have like a shuffle thing, and it was great the other day. Okay, that's good. Part of your okay. Nobody in the waiting room. Oh. I see Jared. Jared has great questions. He was in some of my sessions yesterday.
Yay.
That's good.
Yeah, Jared, you had some really great questions yesterday. I was impressed. I don't think we actually even got to all of them. I was taking notes. So from the transcripts of the sessions that you were in yesterday that I was in, we'll get all those answered and up on the system.
All right, I think we can probably go ahead and get started. There may be one or two more people who kind of trickle in. But good morning, everybody. My name is Amanda Grev. I work with the University of Maryland Extension, and I'm serving on the Future Harvest Board right now. So I am going to be the moderator for this morning's session, along with Amy Rose as our facilitator, kind of technical support. So the two of us will be making sure everything runs smoothly. Just to make sure everybody is in the right place. I think you can probably tell by the slide on the screen, but this is the session Managing Pastured Pork in Your Whole Farm System. And today we have with us Grace Dubansky, who is a lifelong farmer. She grew up on Backbone Farm in the mountains of Western Maryland. From an early age, she took an interest in animal husbandry and raising livestock in a humane and sustainable way. And she has many years of hands-on experience raising pigs, cows, sheep, chickens, and rabbits in a pasture-based system, and believes that animals are a vital aspect for any sustainable farm. So I'm going to turn it over to Grace, and we're excited to hear what she has to say. So thank you, Grace.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Amanda. I am excited to be here. Just a little disclaimer, this is my first time presenting anything, so thanks everybody for coming, and I welcome questions throughout the session. I love questions, and then I would also love any feedback at the end of the session. You can either give me feedback on here, or if you want, you can send me a message over the Socio platform. That works too. But yeah, thanks for coming. As Amanda said, we're going to be talking about pastured pork, specifically as kind of part of like a whole farm system. So first, let's see here. I'm going to get into kind of a little bit about Backbone Farm. My parents moved to the piece of property that we're on now, which is just over 100 acres, and we're set up against the mountains in Garrett County, which is like far western Maryland. They moved here in 1999, so we're going to be entering our 23rd year of farming here on this property, which is really exciting for us. We we do a lot of different things. We have a very large market garden, so we go to 3 farmers markets a week, and then have a couple wholesale accounts as well. and about a 40 family free choice CSA that we have been running since we started our farm. So yeah, we've got the vegetable garden. We grow a couple different fruits, like we've got apples, we've got blueberries, raspberries, gooseberries, and currants. We raise mushrooms. We have like two different types of mushrooms, shiitakes and oysters. We've been cultivating the shiitakes for, gosh, a long time, 20 years maybe. The oysters are a little bit more recent, but we've still been growing those for probably about 8 to 10 years now. And then obviously we have pigs that we raise on a pasture-based system, and then we raise pastured meat chickens as well. We've got horses; they're just pets. I like to ride, and then we raise beef cows, also on a pasture-based system. So that's kind of. Oh, we also have a very large cut flower garden. We grow, cut flowers and sell market bouquets, as well as wholesale to florists in the summertime. And then we have a sister company as well, Backbone Hemp, and we grow hemp for like quality CBD products. So that's kind of like Backbone. We do a lot of different things. Our kind of mission is to grow healthy food for our community. We like to work with the land. We use all organic methods in everything that we do. So yeah, that's Backbone. Here's just a couple pictures of our pigs. That's kind of our farm. The house and the barn have been here for over 100 years. And then kind of everything else that we have slowly added on in the past 20 some years that we've been here. It was basically just the house and the barn when we moved in. So we've done a lot of infrastructure work, fencing and greenhouses, and we have a high tunnel and a couple hoop houses for growing our vegetables. So yeah. So first, I just want to talk about like the few main management styles that people have for pastured pigs. There's obviously, or for just raising pigs in general, there's obviously the confinement style, which, we all know and have seen pictures of, like the CAFOs, which is awful, nasty, huge barns full of pink pigs that don't look particularly happy or healthy. And then there's like a dry lot, which a lot of pasture pigs kind of get lumped into this. It's like a dry lot system where it's one set paddock. They stay there all the time. Ideally, it's dry. Knowing pigs, oftentimes it probably gets muddy. But that is a way that people have, if they have limited space, they can just do that. And then by adding organic matter, materials, fresh snacks for them, it can work. But then there's a rotational pasture aspect as well. And that's kind of where we lie in that whole thing. And so within the pasture-based systems, you're going to want to choose the management style that's right for you. And to do that, you're going to want to ask yourself what you're trying to accomplish on your farm with your pigs. And that can be anything from like, I've got this piece of pasture that is not producing as well as it should be or as well as it could be. And I want to kind of restore that pasture. Or it could be like maintaining already productive pasture that you have. So say you've got a chunk of pasture, it's really nice, it's green, it grows lots of different diverse species of grasses and clovers. To have pigs in there, you're going to want to rotate them pretty frequently. I've heard people say that pigs don't graze. That's not true. My pigs certainly do and will graze. But they are pigs, they like to root. And so if you want to keep your pasture nice and green and still growing those good grasses, you're going to need to rotate your pigs pretty often. A good kind of thing to use to know when to rotate your pigs is they'll start getting like visibly hungry, and you can kind of move them along then. But if you have that nice pasture already, you're not going to want to let them sit in there too long because they will start to root. And then if you have that, it's nice to add like another species in with that, something that's going to eat that grass, that beautiful grass that you have. Because like I said, the pigs are going to graze it, but they won't graze as efficiently or as well as like say cows or sheep will. And any pasture needs that rotation of being eaten down, being trampled in order to be able to regenerate itself and have new growth and keep being productive. And so then next I have here, restoring neglected pastures or brushland. Oftentimes this can be found on farms or properties that haven't been farmed for a while. You'll notice there's going to be patches that maybe used to be really nice pastures or hayfields but have kind of grown up and become brushy, maybe multifloral rose, maybe just goldenrod or undesirable grass species. We have a lot of that on our farm, and that's kind of where our pigs have come in the most handy, is being able to kind of give that land a fresh start. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll fence in those patches, and I like to call it more of like a slash and burn approach, where you put them in there. Sometimes we'll brush hog it down before we put them in. Oftentimes we'll just put them in there and then feed them kind of around in different spots to spread out the impact that they have. But in this case, we leave our pigs in those spaces much longer than a pasture that we have that's already producing well. We'll let them completely root up areas, kind of like it's going to look worse than you want it to look, but their noses do come in handy in situations like this, and it will eventually allow the desirable species of grasses that you want to be able to compete with those more scrubby blackberries, multifloral rose, goldenrod, anything, all those species that are taking over. And then finally, managing woodlots is, pigs thrive in the woods. We have a couple woodlots that we run our pigs through, and you won't see happier pigs than when they're in the woods. They love rooting under the leaves, looking for little roots and grubs and bugs and nuts and whatever else is falling in there. And there are a couple different things that you can accomplish by running pigs in woodlots. From like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with silvopasture, but that's kind of a mix in between like a nice productive grass pasture for ruminants, sheep, cows, whatever it may be, and then also woods to provide shade. And in the case of pigs, if you have the right varieties of trees like oaks, chestnuts, hickories, whatever might be a nut producing tree, is a really nice species to have in for your pigs. So you can use your pigs to help clear out those woodlots to start the beginning of a silvopasture, and get the brush cleared out, help you root up any broken down logs, whatever, or just keeping it as a natural woods is really nice too. And again, with that, if you're just trying to maintain something that you already have, you're going to want to rotate them through more quickly. Whereas if you're trying to clear for something like a silvopasture where you might be coming behind and seeding some perennial pasture grasses, You'll want to leave them in there a little bit longer, let it get a little bit more ripped up. But yeah, those are just kind of a few like main approaches that we personally have used on Backbone Farm here. There's a couple pictures of the projects that we have going now, which you can kind of see behind these pigs here in this picture. There's a series of pastures that we have been rotating our pigs through. You can see there's some bare spots on them. These pastures that they are in now have historically been pretty poor on our farm. Just like growing not very desirable species of grass, mossy patches, multifloral rows in there. And so we've been taking our pigs and just leaving them, again, longer than you think you should in these pastures, and kind of just hitting the reset button on them. These are some little weanlings that I just put out there this summer. This was just this summer, on kind of our last patch of this whole hillside. This is our last plot that we are regenerating with our pigs. So our main pasture management strategy right now is that slash and burn reset button. You can kind of tell from, let's see, hold on, the slides got all mixed up. Here we go. So this is the pasture that we had them in this summer. This picture was taken this fall after I took the pigs out of it. As you can see, you can kind of see up in the back there, that's the pasture above it that has been reseeded. And this is where they just came out of. Now we did disc that after we moved them out, but you can kind of see we didn't leave a whole lot. We let them kind of like root it all up, eat what they're gonna eat, and just kind of reset that whole pasture. You don't want to leave bare ground longer than you have to. So what I would say is if you're gonna do this, have a plan in place to either reseed or have something that you can lay down on top, whether that's like straw or you have some old round bales that you can roll out on top of it. Round bales are a really great tool in regenerating a pasture like this, because oftentimes they will have seeds in it, hay seed in the round bales. If you roll them out, especially right at the end of having your pigs in that pasture, and they'll kind of help trample it down. But that's, a really great tool to use. Now this picture here is a different pasture, and you can see in the background, we didn't let this one go quite as far as we did this one. There are still a lot of patches of completely intact sod. You're always going to have high impact areas in any pasture that you have a pig in. That's going to be where their shelter is, where their water, and where you feed them. But with that in mind, the whole of the pasture we kind of left intact in this plot here. So this picture right here, this was just taken a couple days ago. This picture is this pasture now. So we took those pigs out, disked it, reseeded it. We had a mix of clover and rye that we used. And that's kind of one of our favorite cover crop mixes, is either a red clover or a crimson clover mixed with either oats or rye. And those oats and that rye, they kind of act as a nurse crop. They'll come up really fast and grow fast and provide nice cover and soil retention for the clover seed that is also in there. It's going to come up a little bit later and grow a little bit slower. And then eventually the oats or the rye that you have in there with it either we'll put cows in there and graze it down so that that clover has a chance to grow, or it'll kind of die off on its own. It'll go to seed and die off, and then we can come behind and mow it, or brush hog it, and the clover will then come up underneath of it. So, that's just to show that like it can look really brown and bare and barren. And, we didn't reseed this until November, and that rye was still able to come up and get a root bed going so that, we retain that nice soil that we built in there. And this is a couple pictures of a pasture that we had pigs in the summer of 2020. So this was almost 2 years ago that we had pigs in here. And you can see in the background, there's like still some bare patches. That was our high impact area. That's where we had our feeders and our waterer, and it's where the pigs had the most impact. And we're kind of working on laying more hay in there and getting more organic matter to build that up so that eventually it will be this beautiful, tall, lush grass. But 2 years ago, when we had pigs in here, this pasture would barely grow anything other than like moss and goldenrod. And so we have seen a massive improvement. We did reseed this with that clover and the rye. But as you can see, there's so many other species of grasses that have come up since then. And that just goes to show that almost any piece of land that you have is going to have a dormant seed bank in it. And by putting pigs in this pasture and disturbing the soil and adding nutrients and adding organic matter, and then planting that nurse crop of rye, it kind of allowed those dormant seeds of those more desirable grass species to have a chance to grow and come up. So that's been something that we've been really happy with. We've just been experimenting the past couple of years with leaving our pigs a little bit longer than we normally would. Again, kind of hitting that reset button. Let's see, I think we might have a couple questions. Yeah, go in and seed the area after the pigs. Yeah, we do. And too, I know a lot of people who reseed with things that the pigs specifically are going to enjoy, whether that's like field turnips or radishes or pumpkins, or beans, things like that you can put the pigs back into after they grow, and they're going to enjoy that too. Like I know that turnips and radishes are a really good thing to reseed your pastures with, because that aerates your soil, and then also will give your pigs something to root up and eat if you want to put them back into that pasture. Cows will also eat field turnips, the tops of and the bulbs, I believe too. I don't have a whole lot of experience with that though. We mainly plant for pastures, so that's going to be our clovers and grasses, orchard grasses, and things like that, perennial pasture grass. But let's see. So then, just want to go back to this random little slide back here that I had and talk about farrowing on pasture for a while. So we have raised our pigs. We've farrowed all of our pigs on our farm for about 10 years now. We've been raising pigs. So we've kind of got our own little mishmash breed going. I like to call it our little backbone breed. But through that, we've been able to select for the type of meat that we like, the type of growth that we like, the growth rates, and then also temperament and mothering abilities are super important to us. Almost more important to me is how you interact with your sow. So a really nice, friendly sow is gonna go far on my farm. I of course like the sows like this who will give you 18 healthy piglets and raise, 18, 16 of those is awesome. But we farrow on pasture for most of the year. In the warm months, we farrow on pasture. It's really easy. The moms know what they're doing. And we kind of we always provide shelter. So we always have some sort of A-frame shed or lean-to or some sort of shelter that those mothers can choose to use or not. Oftentimes ours choose not to use them. They kind of self-isolate. They'll go and find what they see as a nice inviting spot for them to have their babies. And then they make their nest. They are really good at gathering natural materials. So like you can see in this middle picture here, this mom, she just picked a bunch of grass and made a nice nest with the grass that she had. And then oftentimes too, we'll provide straw for them. If we notice a mom is nesting, I'll take a bale of straw up for them to use to kind of just make it nice and dry. Let's see. Check my notes here, make sure I'm not missing anything. I just like to, when they are on pasture, keep an extra close watch on them, because as oftentimes they do choose well in their farrowing spots and their nesting instincts are really good. You just never know what the weather's going to throw at them. We had this little picture of these little babies down here. This was this summer, and the moms was two moms who chose to farrow together, exact same day, exact same time, in the same nest. I still don't know like how many one had versus how many the other had, because they were all born right at the same time, which is really cool. And they chose a really nice spot, but it was torrentially raining. And they chose not to farrow in the shelters that we provided. And so just given those circumstances, I chose to put up a tarp over them. Just super easy, simple, string a tarp between some trees and some T-posts. And that just kind of ensures that while pigs are tough and pigs are hardy and baby pigs will survive much more than you might think they would, it never hurts, especially in those first 24 hours of life, to give them all the tools that they need. So I brought fresh straw to them so that they were nice and dry, and I strung that tarp so that they wouldn't just be rained on as they were being born. Even though those moms knew what they were doing, they probably would have been okay, but I always say better safe than sorry, especially when you can and you have the ability to intervene just that little bit. I didn't go as far as to pick up the babies and move them to the sheds, which I have done before, and I know some people do that. In my opinion, that adds like unnecessary stress on the moms and the babies, to move them during that period of birth is hard. But yeah, so that's our mamas. We love them a lot. I have 5 girls in the barn right now who are getting ready to have babies at any moment. I'm on baby watch. I was hoping that they would have babies before this little thing and I could have fresh baby pictures for you, but oh well, maybe tonight. So when you have pigs on pasture, it definitely makes the basics like feeding and watering a little bit more complicated than when they are in a barn or close to your barn. We have kind of done a lot of trial and error in our watering, especially our watering system. Feeding is a little bit easier for us. But we've kind of figured out a few things that make our lives a little bit easier. We have about 4 tanks, these are 250, 300 gallon tanks mounted on trailers, and we kind of use whatever we can find. oftentimes money is tight on farms, and so you just use what you can. This is an old hay wagon running frame that we had lying around that we were able to retrofit and put this tank on it. I can pull this with like my truck or the tractor. If it's empty, I can haul it with our four-wheeler. But that just allows me to get a lot of water almost anywhere on our farm. I just have it set up with a little valve on the end that I can attach a hose to. Oftentimes during the summer, I will set a water trough with a float valve, and then just attach that tank to the float valve. That way there's always fresh water for the pigs. Pigs are destructive, so if they can rip something apart, they will. So if you are using a float valve system in your pasture, I would recommend either having like the actual float valve part out of the fence so that they can't get to it and rip it apart, or if you can like anchor your water trough to the ground somehow. I like to take T-posts, pound those into the ground, and like strap the tank or the water trough to those T-posts so the pigs can't toss it around. Because if they toss that tank and it's attached to a float valve, you're just going to drain your 300 gallons of water right out. And then you're going to have to refill your tank, and it's, anyway, not the end of the world, but just a tip there. We also have, I might have taken my picture of that out, but I don't know if you guys are familiar, there are pig watering nipples that can be like attached to tanks like this. It's just basically you drill a little hole, and then it's a little metal nipple attachment that they suck on, and the water comes out like that. I have a tank like that I like to put on a trailer in the summertime, and then that just gets moved around and parked into their pastures, and they can just get their water that way. That's an easy, pretty passive way to make sure that they always have enough fresh water to drink as long as your tanks are full. Another way is just attaching a hose here, and then when you do your feeding, you just fill up a big trough with water. They're going to get into it. They're going to swim. They love swimming. But that is another way of doing things that I also definitely use. I'm not below filling up a 5-gallon water container too and carrying that around in the back of my feed Jeep. I've got like an old Jeep that I use to feed, and carry that around and pour that into water troughs as needed too. Mud holes are super important for pigs, especially during the warmer months. Like if it's above 60 degrees, pigs don't really sweat. And so they need that mud to cool themselves off. So, we like to give them a nice wallow. Basically, if you just pour, a bunch of water out on the ground, they're going to make their own wallow for themselves. But they love it. They love their mud. And then they also need it to be able to stay cool and not overheat in the summer. Shade is also super important. I meant to talk about that earlier. But where they are in those pastures, I noticed that oftentimes pigs don't really need shelter from like the rain in the summer. They oftentimes enjoy it, but shade is really important. So if you have them in a pasture that doesn't have any trees or bushes for them to get under and hide during those hottest parts of the day, you're going to need to put up some tarps or have some A-frame shelters, preferably with both ends open. Like you can see this shelter here has both ends open. So that provides shade, but also airflow so that it doesn't get hot and stuffy in there. Pigs will sunburn and pigs will overheat really easily. So mud and shade are two very important things for them in the warmer months, especially in the summer. When it's like over 60 degrees, I'd say mud is important. Let's see. So fencing is a big thing. Pigs, like I said, if they can rip something apart, they will rip something apart. So we use electric fencing for all of our pasture rotations in the summer. Typically, we don't have a problem with keeping pigs in that way at all. There are, a couple things that we're able to do to prevent pigs from testing the electric fence. One of those things is using training pens. So here you can see there's a hog panel fence set up behind them. And that's just like a hard physical barrier that they cannot get through. And then what I'll do is run 1 or 2 electric wires. I would use the electric poly wire for that, just along the inside of this hog panel fence, maybe 6 inches in or something, and make sure it's electrified really well. That way, then when they touch that electric fence, they can't go straight through it. That will teach them that they touch that electric, they can't run through it, they'll have to back out of it. And that is a very important step, because if you just put pigs in an electric fence and they touch that wire, most likely their instinct is just going to be to keep running and go through it. And then they will quickly learn that they can it's going to hurt for a second, but they can get through it and run through it, and then they're out. So just to go back here, we have a lot of high tensile perimeter fencing on our farm. So this is a 5-strand high tensile fence. This one, the bottom wire is electrified here. And that does pretty well to keep pigs in, because when they're trying to go under something, they're going to have noses to the ground. They're first going to touch this bottom wire. If that's electrified, they're probably not going to go through it. And this is not a great picture of this, but my favorite fencing is just like a single poly wire. I use a double wire for pigs, single strand for cows, but for pigs, just a 2-strand, one maybe 6 inches off the ground and one maybe a foot above that. And as long as that's well electrified, pigs are not necessarily going to go through that unless they're hungry, unless they need something, they're hungry, they're thirsty, they get spooked by something and run out. But generally, they're going to respect that. And that is kind of our main fencing system that allows us to rotate through different areas. That fencing is highly portable, whereas, this high tensile, clearly, it's more expensive to put up. It's not portable at all. So yeah, this is kind of our nice perimeter fencing, make sure nothing gets through that. But then to break up into individual pastures, I do like the poly wire. And I just like those fiberglass posts with the movable insulators, works super well, very versatile. Now, a lot of people will use netting. Premier One, the fencing company, they sell netting that is like specifically for pastured pigs. I have not used the pig specific netting, but the sheep netting and the chicken netting that I have used for pigs, it works fine. I just don't think it's necessary. And then if you leave it off, if you leave the electric off on that and pigs decide to root through it, it's going to get all broken and tangled, and it's just a mess. So I really prefer to use the single strand poly wire. That's that. This is my little fencing cart that I built. That has been a game changer for me because, there's a lot of fencing that we do between the cows and the horses and the pigs. And this is an old jogging stroller that I kind of took apart and then remade into this little fencing cart. So I've got a 15-gallon barrel there to hold my my fence posts, and then I just strapped a milk crate on the front, and that can carry like my fence reels and hammers, insulators, whatever else, my fence tester, whatever else I might need to complete the job for the day. yeah, so that's that. And then in the winter time, all of our pigs come to our barn in the winter. And there are several reasons for that. Our farm geography kind of dictates a lot of what we do. We've got a lot of hills on our farm, and being in the mountains of Western Maryland, we oftentimes have pretty harsh, snowy winters. And even if it's not snowy, it's bound to be wet. And so getting around the farm can get really tricky in the winter. So bringing them down to the barn just like makes caring for them a lot easier. It guarantees that we're going to be able to get everything to them every day. I've spent enough time in the winter carrying buckets of feed by hand through feet of snow to know that that's not a fun option. And it can be pretty tricky in the winter. So we built recently an addition onto our barn specifically for our pigs. It's nice and open and airy. We've got skylights in there to let plenty of sunlight and fresh air in. This tank back here is one of those nipple tanks that I was talking about. That's a really nice option for inside. That way they can't like tip over a water trough that they have and completely flood their pen and make it a wet, gross mess. Because that is one of the more important things when they're inside, is being able to keep them dry. So ease of care is one of the main reasons we bring them into the barn in the winter. But also one of our main goals / our main benefits of having pigs on our farm is manure collection. And having them in the barn for 4 to 5 months out of the year allows us to collect and stockpile a bunch of manure, which is really nice. As you can see in here, we have, we give them plenty of organic matter and bedding. Leaves are a really nice option to use for that. Wood chips are really, really good. Just organic matter piled in there. We use deep bedding systems, so that just means things get layered on top of each other, and it builds up the whole time that they're in there. We're not mucking it out weekly. We're just constantly adding fresh bedding and organic matter into there. Yeah, straw is a really good one. Keeping them like engaged and entertained can oftentimes be hard. That's one of my least favorite things about having pigs in the barn, is just like they don't have that same outlet as they do when they're outside and allowed to like root in the dirt and eat grass and do all of those things. So I like to collect pumpkins in the fall, and we'll like stockpile pumpkins to feed out to the pigs throughout the season. Corn stalks are a really nice thing to have on hand. I really like to give them round bales. That is a nice engaging thing for them to be able to like rip apart. I'll just throw a whole round bale in there. They can rip it apart, and it gives them something to do, gives them some fodder to eat on, to munch on. Corn fodder, which is like the leftover stalks that get baled up at the end of corn harvest season. That's a really nice thing to have on hand to be able to give to your pigs in the winter. Yeah, we love that. So let's see. Yeah, constantly adding organic matter is a really important thing if you have your pigs indoors for any amount of time. We do have a little, or we did for a while have a dry lot area out the back of our barn for them to be able to go outside during the winter. That's kind of on hold right now. We're improving that area back there so that it doesn't just get completely destroyed and washed away during those winters when we've got pigs out there. But if if there is a way to have them outside, I love to have them outside. To be able to get sunlight and just get their noses in the dirt is great. Another, yeah, veggie scraps. We like to feed our pigs our own like house food scraps during the winter, but then also, like I said, collecting pumpkins from people, leftover fall decorations, restaurant food scraps, as long as there's no meat in it, you know, just giving those pigs something to munch on other than their dry corn soy feed that we feed them, you know, which is needed. They need, we do feed our pigs like a fur trail based pig ration, and that's corn, soy, and oats mainly, with like those added fur trail minerals in there. But then we supplement with a bunch of food scraps in the summer, and then also in the winter as much as we can. Another reason that we bring our pigs in the winter is for better farrowing conditions. We have farrowed outside in the winter, and it has been fine. But we like to bring them in and just have them in that dry, out of the wind places that are easy for me to monitor and keep an eye on those ladies. Like I said, I've got 5 girls out in the barn right now who are getting ready to pop anytime. And it's just really nice for me to be able to walk out there at night and be able to easily check on them all. Now, when they're in the barn, I do separate them out into either by themselves, or groups of 2 works fine too, but there's just less room for them. When they're out on pasture, they'll self-isolate really well. They'll kind of choose their own area where no one's going to bother them, and go off and have their babies. But in the barn, that's harder. They're usually a little bit more bored, and so more likely to bother each other. And there's just not as much room. So I do separate them out into groups. And, you know, this pen has a dirt floor, so it's super easy for me to pound T-posts in and use hog panels as a divider. There's a couple more stalls just back in this corner here that we use as well. Yeah. You know, inside, there's more of a danger of having kind of like wet, stagnant air. So airflow is definitely important when you have them in a barn. You don't want it to be like drafty and cold and windy, but also just having like open, bright areas is really important, and that can be hard with old barns. But we've, you know, you can see we've kind of taken out some of the siding here and replaced it with windows to let more light in. This whole wall on that side is all windows, and that just lets really nice light in the winter, which is very important, in my opinion, for your success in farrowing indoors. So here's some cute inside babies. I also, in the barn, our stalls are not super baby proof, and I really like that because that then allows those little guys to kind of get out on their own, and they may cause a little bit of wreak a little bit of havoc, but I think it's really important for them to be able to get out and get their noses in the dirt in the first couple weeks of life, and get out and be able to lay in the sunshine. You know, if it's a mild winter, it's totally common for like all of the piglets to come out several hours a day, get away from their moms, and just like lay in the sun and root around in our barnyard. And I really love being able to let them do that. So it just goes back to like, if it's possible to let your pigs be outside at all in the winter, I think that's awesome. Yeah. And then at the end of the winter, we usually move our pigs back outside, you know, like middle of March, somewhere around there, kind of like once the spring comes, the weather turns a little bit, and I get all of our fencing set back up. We'll move our pigs outside, and then we've got all of this beautifully stockpiled manure mixed with that beautiful organic matter that you've had in there, leaves, wood chips, whatever it may have been that you've been adding along the winter. And we can come in and scoop that out. And then you can either, we'll spread some of that directly onto like our hay fields and our fallow plots in our garden. Just spread that manure directly on there. But then also you can compost it. We've got a pretty big composting operation where we take those, any leftover wood chips, leaves, manure, and turn that into really nice compost that we can use in our gardens, in our high tunnels, in our hoop houses to grow that beautiful produce, flowers, everything else that we have. So that's a super important aspect of our pig operation for us, is having that stockpiled manure. That allows us to have a little bit more of a closed loop system on our farm. We don't really ever have to buy in any fertilizers or composts. We're able just to make it all with that manure that we stockpile over the winter. Now we do have cows as well that kind of go in a confined area in the winter for a little while. So we have manure from the cows as well. Yeah, that's a really important aspect to our pig operation, is having the access to that manure and being able to then use it as inputs for the other aspects to our farm, the produce and the flowers. Yeah, so these nutrients just get put right back into our land to grow beautiful things. I think that's really cool. So feeding scraps to pigs in the summertime, we feed a lot of vegetable scraps to our pigs. Looks like my picture did not get added there, but we have a fairly large market garden. So we usually have, leftover scrap from markets, seconds, vegetables that we can't get rid of. Tomatoes, we always end up with a bunch of tomato that might not necessarily be marketable. So it's just really nice to have an output or an outlet to get rid of those scraps during the summer, other than composting. Obviously, you can compost vegetable scraps, but sometimes it's not quite practical. And I really enjoy having supplemental feed for my pigs in the summertime. They love getting their scraps, summer squash, pumpkins, tomatoes, whatever it may be that we've got left over, we'll just toss to them and they'll pick through it. They don't eat all of it. They don't love raw potatoes, but whatever they don't eat, just get it into the ground wherever they are, and it's just gonna break down and add organic matter and nutrients to the soil there wherever they happen to be. Another one of my main happy point with having animals on my farm is being able to provide fresh meat to customers. I think it's really great to be able to show people that meat can be raised in an ethical, responsible way. Know that a lot of our customers only eat local meat, and I love to provide that. And I really enjoy being at markets and being able to connect with my community and my customers, and really have those important conversations. I know that meat is kind of a hot topic right now, to eat it, to not eat it. It's saying my internet connection is unstable, so I apologize if I start breaking up a little bit.
You sound great so far.
Living. Okay, good. Just having those conversations, I think, is really important. It can be really easy for people to jump on that bandwagon of meat is bad, both ethically and environmentally. Meat's bad. And so I feel like cool to have those conversations with customers, and selling meat at a market just like automatically opens you up to having those conversations, people coming up and asking those questions of like, why is your meat better than the meat I would buy at Walmart? Like, why should I eat meat? And so, having those conversations is really important to me. It is a very divided topic right now, and I've had some really interesting conversations with customers, and just about the ethics surrounding meat and environmental concerns that people have, which are completely valid, and I get it, and it's nice to be able to have those conversations.
We have a question. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about the processing?
Oh yeah, great question. So we sell, up until recently, we have sold like the bulk of our meat through markets, which requires a USDA certified processor. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, there has been a lot of stuff going on with USDA processors. All of our meat processing has been like just condensed over the past number of years. There are now 4 main meat processing companies in this country. And so it's become really hard to find USDA certified processors. So it's a huge problem facing all farmers right now. So we're kind of moving more toward custom processing, which is where we sell our pigs by the whole or the half, in which the customer is then basically buying a live pig, and then we take it to our custom processor, which is state certified. So they're still like, they're inspected, they're certified, but they don't have to be certified by the USDA for resale for individual cuts of meat. It's more for bulk meat. So those wholes and those halves. And so that's kind of how we're selling most of our meat now. We have customers that buy a half of a pig. We take the pig to the butcher, and then from there, the customer will talk to the butcher themselves. They'll fill out those cut sheets. You kind of get to choose more like what you want. Say like, I just want the tenderloin, I don't want pork chops, or I want all pork chops and no tenderloin. Or I just want a whole pig of sausage, forget about the individual cuts. So it's nice for customers to be able to have that choice. It's nice for us because we really don't have to deal with much after raising the pig. We take it to the butcher, and then our customer deals with the butcher, pays the butchering fees, and then picks up their meat from the butcher. And so that makes things nice for us, especially since we are having to butcher or having to book our USDA butcher appointments like a year plus out in order to get any appointments, which is a little bit ridiculous. A year ago, we would have been able to, or 2 years ago, I guess, call our butcher and get an appointment within the next like 2 weeks for our hogs. And so just to see that shift happen has been a little bit scary, and we've had to shift the way that we do things a little bit. Got to stay on your toes, be ready for anything. But yeah, great question. Anything else that you want me to clear up about that?
So I was actually, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, I was actually just curious, what's your schedule like for breeding? How many times a year do you farrow, and do you exclude any times of the year?
Yeah, good question. We farrow twice a year, and it kind of ends up being, so we keep our boar in with our sows all year round, through farrowing and everything. When we farrow in the barn, like we'll separate him out temporarily sometimes, just again because of that space issue. He can get kind of curious. So having him with our girls throughout the whole year kind of puts our farrowing schedule on a little bit of like a cycle. So it's not like every January and every September we have babies. It's more like we'll have babies in February one year, and then it'll be in like July or August, and then it'll be in December of the next year. And so they kind of like choose it themselves. And I'm always keeping an eye on my girls, making sure that everyone is in really good body condition. And if anyone gets too skinny or seems like they can't handle having babies, I'll remove them and let them recover for a little while, have a break. But typically we farrow twice a year. And it ends up working out really well if we just keep our boar with them. And then, I can kind of pay attention and have a rough idea of when I think they get bred and when I think I should be expecting piglets. And yeah, good question.
Very nice. We have about 15 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions?
So what is your overall herd size then if you have the one male, and what is the average time that you keep the ladies in the breeding program?
So right now we have 5 breeding sows. And so that puts us ideally right around 50 piglets per farrowing period. And so that's then puts us finishing about 100 pigs a year. And then, we just have the one boar, and he is, does all 5 girls, no problem. We usually keep our sows around 5 to 6 years, depending on their condition. Oftentimes my biggest problem that I see with pigs that get old is that they just get really big. They get too large to be able to like safely and efficiently like be able to have babies. Oftentimes their litter numbers will drop if they get too big, or they'll start having more problems farrowing. So that's been my most consistent problem, is they just get too big for their own good. And it's a little bit of a balance of trying to ration their feed so that they don't grow too big, but it's a hard one to balance out. I really believe that if you just fed a pig, I don't think it would stop growing. I think they just keep growing forever. Good question. Anything else with that I can clarify? Cool. Any other questions? I do have like 1 or 2 more slides to go through, but I'm happy to keep answering questions.
Awesome.
There's a question in the chat about waste buildup in the pastures.
Yeah.
So they were asking if that was an issue.
Yeah, so not really. Sometimes, those pastures that we are leaving them long enough where there might be a waste buildup, those are the pastures that we're trying to hit that reset button on. And so those added nutrients is a really good thing. I will say that, again, leaving that bare ground for too long, that's going to encourage runoff. That's that's where that waste buildup is going to become a problem, is if you've got a bunch of waste buildup in your pasture and then you take your pigs out and then you just leave it bare. That's where disking is going to break up the manure that they're going to leave in the pasture, either dragging your pasture or disking it. It's going to help smooth out any big old ruts that they've rooted up. B, that's going to help spread out the manure. And then again, rolling out hay or reseeding into those pastures helps mitigate any issues that might arise from a waste buildup in the pastures. That's a good question. Yeah.
So Grace, this is Barbara Haynes. I had one more question for you. So I was watching or researching online, about the farrowing and the concern, especially if you have them farrowing in a barn, about the mothers crushing the babies.
Yeah.
So do you have you had problems with that, or do you have anything that you do to mitigate that, or?
Yeah, it definitely is a problem. I definitely have lost piglets just because they've been crushed. A lot of that can be helped just by selective breeding. I breed for mothering skills almost above all else. So, you want a sow that's going to be really gentle and slow. When they are inside, it does become more of a risk because there's walls that come into the picture, and things like that can get in the way. People will use like rails along their walls. It's maybe just a rail set a foot out from the wall or something, and that just gives the piglets a place to kind of hide and shelter from their moms when they're laying down. Really past, like, once those piglets reach a day and a half to 2 days old, they are aware of and able to remove themselves from dangerous situations. So they're like aware of their moms laying down in the pasture, and they're able to like get up and get out of the way pretty fast. I haven't really had a whole lot of issues with that in the pasture. It's mainly been in the barn. And it's mainly been if there have been too many sows together in one pen while they're farrowing. But it's definitely an issue. And yeah, like I said, breeding for mothering instincts is really helpful for that. And just allowing adequate space. Too much bedding, oftentimes too much bedding can be a bad thing, because those piglets will get themselves all buried and snuggled down in there, and their moms like don't see them, or the piglets can't get out of the way fast enough. So you want enough bedding, but you don't want them to be like buried in 1.5 feet of straw. Yeah, good question.
Thanks.
Cool. So yeah, pigs are a vital aspect to our farm. I derive a great amount of joy and satisfaction from raising pigs. I really love them, and I feel like there's a really important connection that comes with having a hand in raising any animal. Really, there's like an important connection that comes there, and a great satisfaction of like caring for something, and knowing that something is relying on you, and that you are doing the best that you can to make them happy and comfortable and healthy. Also, they allow us to have a pretty closed loop system on our farm, with providing us fertilizer and great tools to help us kind of renew and regenerate our pastures and woodlots. This actually is a great picture right here, kind of demonstrating this. This was just a super scrubby brushland. This picture was taken maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And now this is one of our most productive pastures. And we did that just using pigs. We didn't really even have to reseed a whole lot into this pasture. It had a really great dormant seed bank. But just to circle back on that, that's a really great picture to kind of demonstrate what I was talking about before with those brushlands. But yeah, they kind of, pigs, they're an important aspect to our farm, and allowing us to have compost readily available that we can make ourselves, and then just providing us with super healthy, protein-rich food for ourselves and our friends and our community is really important to me. And yeah, if you have any more questions after the fact, feel free to reach out either over Socio or shoot us an email. Check out our website. We're hiring interns right now for our 2022 growing season. So if any of you know anyone who might be interested, feel free to send along information. Our website should be linked on my speaker profile on Socio. Yeah.
Oh, we had
Let's
one more
see.
question. Are there
Okay,
any
great.
plants that you know of that are dangerous for your pigs?
Yeah, there are a couple plants that, cherry trees, black cherry, can be poisonous if the leaves are wilted. From my experience, pigs do a really good job of kind of picking and choosing for themselves. They know pretty well what's good for them and what's not. We have had we've had one instance where I think a pig got poisoned by something that it ate, pretty unexplained death that happened, but we have not had any issues other than that one time, and who knows if that's actually what it was, so but
I tell people all the time when they come and see my animals that and they ask about that they're smarter than we are and they know what they should and should not eat.
Yep.
Oh,
exactly.
I know
they
we
know what they're about.
we only have 3 minutes, but another question just came. How
Okay.
do you move your pigs to the next pasture or woods, and do they follow you?
Yeah, great question. I like to use, depending on the situation, my breeding sows that we have, they will follow me. It's super easy to walk them anywhere. They're so tame and docile and like kind of in your hand, in your pocket kind of pigs. So we walk them anywhere that we have to move them. My younger pigs, it's a little bit harder, and especially since there are typically more of them, anywhere from like 25 to 40 pigs in a group, it can be a little bit more chaotic and a bigger deal to move them just by foot. So oftentimes I will get a stock trailer and load them in a trailer to move them from pasture to pasture. That also helps with moving fence so that I can like take down the fence that they're in and put it up while they're in the trailer. And then that also helps get them used to loading onto a trailer. So then when the day comes, when it is time to process, the trailer isn't this new, huge, scary thing. It's just, they're just getting on a trailer to go somewhere else again. Yeah, good question.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed you coming and sharing your knowledge with us today.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us.
I hope you join us for the interactive lunch if you can.
Yeah, I'm hoping to.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks. Bye.